Right.
Big no catch.
Right.
Big no catch.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It's January 30th. This is our Beach Advisory Committee meeting. My name's Paul Hogan. I'm the current chair. We'll introduce ourselves starting at that end. Pam?
I'm Pam Sikansky. I'm the current vice chair.
Fred Stafford, Communications.
Carol Sherman, secretary.
John Dykstra, representing the board. Selectman.
Hi, I'm Barry Engel, and I'm on the Traffic and Safety Committee.
Do we have Paul Hayes? If you see Paul Hayes online, can you promote him? He's also a member of the committee. He's in Boston, I think. Let us know if he joins. How many people are online? Just
28.
28.
Paul so far.
Okay, thank you. The first item on our agenda is just to approve the minutes, which were distributed a day or so ago. Any comments, questions? The only thing I have is we did recommend a $3,000 expenditure for the beach profiling. It turns out we were wrong. It was $1,000, the town contribution. So I don't think we need to change the minutes, and we just made a recommendation.
Which was wrong.
Which was wrong. The town corrected us, and all is well. The next thing on the agenda is just if there's tonight to discuss it, throw the proposal out there. And here we are. John is going to start. John was on the subcommittee, and John is just going to give a bit of the background as to why we have this as a topic. We're going to move out of the way.
Were you going to mention process, or is that?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. The process, yeah, I did, phone call started this morning around 7:15. And just as a matter of process, the beach committee, our role under the beach use agreement and the ordinance is to, one of them is to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen about beach rules, related things like that. So we don't have the authority to pass an ordinance. Their proposal tonight wouldn't require a new ordinance. It's just a proposal for changing the current rules. And under the ordinance and the beach use agreement, the Board of Selectmen has certain powers to adopt rules to take care of the beach. And so the process is we make recommendations to them. They then consider it. Sometimes we go back and forth and debate it. Sometimes we modify. Sometimes they reject us. Sometimes they approve what we recommend. So that's the process. And we don't have a specific timeline. And should we dim the lights for this,
It
or?
actually worked pretty well. If you can dim them, I think that would be good, but the color looked pretty
Well,
good.
it goes
to me.
half and half this way.
Which is
We
better?
can't dim them.
All right, then this is then it's perfect.
Okay. I'm going to move on.
Am I going to slide down? Just slide down.
Yep, I'm coming down with
You
you.
guys aren't going to talk, I'll have you guys just slide a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, sorry. Eric, can you pull my shirt out?
Start at the beginning, huh? Can you hear me on the mic all right?
Sounds good here.
And then,
That means nothing, unfortunately.
uh,
Right.
Yeah, I can hear you.
okey-doke. But now, you're going to go to the beginning, right?
Sorry.
I'm going to bore you all with slides. Hopefully, I'll move through them quickly, I promise. Me over, yes. Okay, guys, can I have you kind of cuddle all the way around? I'm going to sit on the end.
Oh, you want me to move?
Yep. Because I'm blocking the view of there. Good? Good, thanks, Les. You know, I realized when we put out this proposal that for some of you, maybe many of you, it's the first time you've really heard about this or seen it, even though we have talked several times about it, and we kind of got, I think, the cart, well, it's happened that the cart's ahead of the horse. So before we talk about the proposal, I'd like to take a minute just to give you a little bit of the background that led us to where we are with this proposal. And this may not be the correct proposal. I mean, we're here tonight to talk about things, and we'll see where we go from it. So let's hop right in. What I'd like to talk to you about quickly as we can. Next slide, please. A little bit about the dune evolution and why the dune grass is important. Then we're going to talk a little bit, look at some drone imagery. We've been collecting imagery to show the shape and size of the dune and how that has changed after storms. And I'd like a chance just to show you what we have to date. Then we'll take a look at a survey that I did at the end of August in terms of where and numbers of kayaks that were on the beach. And then we'll take a look together at, what do we think the problem is and what do we think the solution might be. So let's hop in and look at dunes. Just the next slide, please. The healthy dune profile. So, I can't leave the mic, so this is too bad, but I wish I had a pointer. But what you have is you have a shape. This is a cross-section, so you're kind of standing at the tides and looking down towards the little river. And you've sliced the dune in half. You've got the sand dune with the vegetation, that beach face. Our berm is big on the East Ark, right? There's a very large berm, and then it drops down into what we might call the pan, and that's the shallow part where the tide comes back and forth. Good, healthy dune. And then the next slide, the big storm comes. We had a major one in 2011. It was 7 years later before we got nailed by the storm of 18. And then we've now had one in 23. So what do these storms do? The large waves come in, they tear through the vegetation that is there, they chew away the sand. In this, they're showing it depositing the sand offshore in a berm. But you think about, have you ever noticed that after a big storm, what happens is that whole pan of the East Ark lifts up. And you can see that. The rock that's down there on the beach as you're approaching Little River? Watch how that rock gets buried and uncovered. The rock ain't moving. And after this storm, there was about that much of the rock left atop. And then over time, next slide, please, that sand starts to, by the natural process, get moved back on shore. So the pan becomes a little bit steeper. The sand is moved back up on the shore. The rock gets exposed a little more. And you start to build the berm. Then the next slide, and that can take 6 to 9 months. That's the first few months that'll happen. Now the berm really starts to build and move forward. And I'm sure you've seen that on the beach, how you get those beautiful little lagoons behind. That's that front berm still trying to move and fill in the area behind it. At this point, we're starting to get a little bit of vegetation start. And you can see what they're just showing the diagrams that the little vegetation starts to emerge. If that vegetation is left alone, if it stays healthy, if it continues to grow, then you get to the next slide. And the next slide now, the late recovery is about 9 months in or so. We have the vegetation capturing the wind-blown sand and building up the dunes. And that's been the normal process that's worked on this beach for millennia. Where we have been fortunate, what's been so over most of those millennia is that the storms are far enough spaced that there's enough time for that dune to recover, for that dune grass to grow, and for the sand to build, and for the dune to be ready for the next punch, because the punch is always coming based on the storm. So that's kind of the evolution. Does anybody have any questions on what we're seeing for the evolution? Let's take a look. So the next slide is Goose Rocks, as we know and love it, the East Ark. I like to call it the East Ark. As a kid, we always called it the public beach, but we don't call it that anymore. But so the East Ark, the Center Ark, and it goes up to Shore Rocks, and then the West Ark is Shore Rocks over to Batson's. And we are an Ark and Bay Beach, so that's why so the East Ark. The next slide are the results of some drone imagery. Paul Hogan and I have been flying drones. The town has given us $150 to support our online processing, and we can create 3D models from the drone imagery. It's overlapped and it's stereo. This one was taken April 22, so it's a ways ago, obviously well before the storm. And then the next slide, please, is the drone imagery. Now, don't mind the colors. I still haven't learned how to get the darn colors working, but we're going to zoom in and you'll see some of the differences. But this is the 3D model that we collected on December 26th. That was just a few days, obviously it was 3 days, after the storm that we had. So let's take the next slide. It zooms in a bit. And so here we are. Proctor's up above. What's kind of fun is that this old line is the 11 storm. This was the scarp of the 18 storm, right through here. And this is everything that had built out since the 18 storm. So that's the sand. That's why we did the staking. We kept the veg growing. It's capturing the sand, and that's starting to build out. That's the good news. The next slide is the bad news. This was right after the storm. And now, Dave, can we do our dance? So here is the line of the 18 scarp, and here is all the sand that was lost coming down in through here from the 11 storm. So we've basically chewed away most of what had been built up for those years. Let's go to the next slide, please. We're a little bit further up, and then the next one, and then the dance. And you can see what had built out here from the sand dune, and what had built out all in front of here now is just totally washed back. And there's been some real hacks on that sand. So the sand is moving. Now the reason we're going to keep doing this is if it happens as the scientists say that it will happen, that we'll have more frequent and harder storms, then we're going to be able to make these images and understand and be able to tell DEP, if we get to that point, how much sand we've lost and hopefully have some way to mitigate it. But as it stands now, we're losing significant sand, and the storms have appeared to be coming more frequently, although that's 3 points on a graph. That makes a good straight line. All righty, next slide, please. So let me just briefly cover what we as a committee have been trying to do to prevent that erosion. And again, the key is to keep the grass healthy. Because if the grass is healthy, then as the wind blows, the grass and the roots capture the sand builds, grass grows, sand builds, and you get the idea. So since 18, the committee has been running the stakes and twine to try to, the key is we've got to incentivize people not to walk and particularly not to pull kayaks up on that beach grass, because that's what kills it. And that's really our enemy. And that's what's driving this whole thing, is how do we keep kayaks out of that grass so we keep the grass healthy and we allow the dunes to grow. So we did the stake and twine a little aggressively the first year, you'll remember, but we learned to bring it back and get that into a reasonable compromise. And then in 2020, Paul, what's the family's name? Do you remember?
Nalto.
The Naltos? Yeah, Naltos, who donated the 9, actually they're 10 because they're in 2 pieces, one of them, kayak racks. And so in 2020, we approached the Conservation Trust as a committee, and the Conservation Trust was willing to allow us to put those kayaks in their 25-foot reserved area in front of the lots that they own along the East Arc. So there they went in. And in 2020, they were a smashing success. We had the kayaks. There were very few that went onto the dunes, if any. And then 21, we probably doubled the number of kayaks. And then in '22, you probably went up close to a power of 2 again. And that is what has brought us to this point today. If we take the next slide, please. This is the result of a survey that I did just walking the beach. There was a grand total of 191 kayaks and watercraft. This was in August of '22, and that counted paddle boards, canoes, and surfboards, but it did not include the chairs, umbrellas, and everything else that was stuffed under a lot of those kayaks. On Dinghy Point, 12 of the 36 watercraft were actual dinghies back in the day of dinghies. The majority were kayaks and paddleboards. So we'll run through these slides pretty quickly. Next slide, please. So this is looking at Dinghy Point. A lot of those kayaks are up into the sand, into the early veg. Remember that young veg is so important because without it, you're not capturing the beginning of the collect. There were 36 there. There aren't any racks. You'll see there. Next slide, please. Down at Edgewood, mostly covering the racks, but there are a lot of kayaks that are up in the grass. 46 there. The next one on Proctor. Here the behavior was pretty good, except for that yellow dude. But there were 30 kayaks there. Next slide, please. Going down, you can see they're all over the place and all up into the grass. And the last is Jeffries, where there was a pile of them as well. In fact, there's not a rack at Jeffries, so everything is just haphazard. So, I mean, that's kind of where we are. The next slide, please. So what we're facing is that, the summary, these are the things we did. In 2020, we brought down the kayak racks. Between 18 and 20, there were still kayaks that were moving to the grass. So we got the racks in place. 2020 was great, but then since 2020, we've had an explosion of kayaks. And it makes sense. If I had a kayak on the beach, if I can leave it on a rack, why the heck would I drag it back and forth? Come on. I mean, and that's what people are doing. They're storing, and this isn't a blame game. It's an obvious thing to do, but we created a monster. We put the racks there, trying to keep the few people that traditionally were using and leaving kayaks there, and it invited everyone to leave their kayak there. Not an unreasonable thing, just a bad thing for the dunes. So the next slide, please. So the problem is too darn many kayaks, and a significant number of them are threatening the dune grass. The solution, I believe, is to limit the number of kayaks. So the question to you all is, how do we do that? We took a rather draconian approach, I must admit. We said, that's real easy. You just tell everybody, no kayaks. You can still carry them in, you carry them out, you use the beach. We're not saying no kayaks on the beach, obviously, but we're saying that you can't store them on the beach. We would not put out the racks again. Those are our racks. We wouldn't put them out. And you can't say that and not enforce it. If you don't have teeth, hell, it's not going to work. So we got together. We have a group of folks that for $80, he'll come down and move a kayak. If we will mark the kayak, we'll tag it, give someone 24. We could argue for 48. I think 24 is enough. If they don't move it, it gets moved, and they can retrieve it for a maximum cost of, I forget what the number was, and that's only if it's there above 10 days. So that's kind of how we got here. Granted, it's a strong proposal, but our beach is worth it. The people who live along that beachfront will certainly argue that it's worth it. We want this to be here for our want to hear from I don't know, but our grandchildren, God willing, it will be here. But certainly, we've got several generations before this darn climate catches us as far as the beach goes. I'm clear of that. And let's make those several generations, and hope, God willing, lots more. But let's keep our beach the way our beach has always been. The way if you were here when I was here at my age, you remember how the beach was. Why lose that? Why lose that for chunks of plastic? So, that's
right.
my pitch.
Team, come on back in, you guys. Thank you, John. John's a geologist, by the way, so you might have guessed with his. All right, I guess first, on the current proposal, are there comments from anyone on the board?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. Do I have to push a button or just talk?
Either their own comments or if someone's asked you to make a comment or.
Yeah, no, I know we keep saying kayaks, but it's not just the kayaks, it's the paddle boards. It's these big 6-foot tall flamingo floats that people are leaving on the beach, and they're putting them on the kayak racks and displacing people there. And, and as John mentioned, some people that do store their kayaks then put beach chairs under them and all this other stuff. And, I have 4 kayaks. I used to leave them on the beach. I don't love the idea of having to cart them down whenever I want to use them, But I don't know where you draw the line, If we did a lottery or something like that, well, you'd still piss off the people that never got a spot. And then you'd also require somebody to check every kayak or paddleboard to see what it is. So it's not a fun situation because it's something we've, quite frankly, been spoiled with. I don't know of another beach. I tried looking on some of the sites, but I don't know of another beach that allows you to do it. A lot of beaches, if you want to go to Hampton, you just won't see it in the morning, So it's not a great situation, but the whole idea is how do we protect the beach? And also as the sea does rise, every year we've got less and less sand. You go down to the end of the beach that has the big, seawalls. They don't have a beach at high tide anymore because unfortunately seawalls tend to disrupt the natural flow of the sand, and eventually you end up with no dry sand. So, and John, one thing you didn't mention was what you had mentioned before about when we do get a big summertime storm.
Yeah, well, that is, yes. The fear is that, and it's been a while since we've gotten a big summertime storm, for sure. But we get them. And can you imagine, and those racks, they're not in concrete. They will lift, those kayaks will lift them, and they will be tumbling and pushed up on the dune. It would, I think, be catastrophic in terms of damaging the vegetation, if not just scouring the dune itself. So, yeah, that's a fear.
Other comments from up here before? I only have one just that was given to me today, which was, there are really 2 parts to this, the kayaks and then dinghy point and
Yes.
the tie between the mooring, the boats out on mooring and the boats that are allowed to be on dinghy point. And the comment that came to me today was the moorings go east and west end, and it's not really practical for someone whose mooring is at the west end or at the far east end to row their dinghy from dinghy point all the way to the other one of the other ends. So, is there a way to, for those people to? I guess at the west end they're just putting those boats on their properties,
Yeah, the
or
west end, on the east end, I don't know what the folks are doing now, if those moorings are
there must be.
beachfront homes, or if they're.
It could be both.
they
Beachfront
also
homes,
could
Jeffrey's
take the
Way.
mooring down the river and around, but that's still.
No
a
one
row.
does that.
That's a row,
Yeah.
yeah, that's.
So that was the only
Yeah,
comment I
I've
had.
seen some people swim out to them out there, so I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Um,
Well, weren't we talking about putting a mooring registration number on the boats at Dinghy Point anyway?
At Dinghy Point, yeah,
Yeah, well,
Just for
couldn't you do
Dinghy
the
Point.
same?
You could
At
do
the
the
others?
same, and you could say,
but we'd have to find, but the town, that's town property. It would have to be someone, we'd have to make another reserved property for dinghies at the west end. I guess it could be done.
Or that you could just say associated dinghies maybe on the beach. It's going to be limited by the number of moorings that are allowed out there, and
But it
that
would have to be on
people
town
put them
beach.
wherever.
It would be town beach. It couldn't be in the 20, it couldn't be in someone else's.
Well, unless it was their
reserve
own.
area. Exactly.
I mean, no one's ever complained that somebody else's
no,
dinghy
exactly.
is
No, exactly.
on their property.
No, exactly.
Okay, so we can take comments, questions from both people here and on people who are on Zoom. We'll do the audience first. If you want to speak, raise your hand and go to the mic and tell us who you are. And great, thanks.
You're welcome. My name is Todd Chisholm. I have a family residence at 530 Kings Highway, which is the west end. And you brought up a topic that I was going to bring up. How is the west end going to be handled for beach owners? I mean, for boat owners. I have a mooring and a boat down there. I'm not a beachfront property owner, but I have access right now to the beach through a right-of-way.
Sure.
And I keep my dinghy down there along with kayaks. So is this just an east end proposal, or is this a west end as well?
It was intended to cover the whole beach.
Okay. And then, so that isn't referenced in any of the documentation that I saw. It's referring to the east end and Dinghy Point. So we would need to addend that if in fact we move forward with it to address the west end as well. And then we are currently not a beachfront property owner.
Just a quick question. So
Sure.
you put your dinghy down on the beach near the right-of-way. Is it on town property, or do you get permission from somebody to put it there? Or
Well,
you
we
just
have a right of way to the beach.
Right.
So we.
But I mean, in terms
Up to this point, it hasn't been an issue.
Okay,
So, I don't know how, maybe we're raising something that we're causing it, that's gonna be an issue, which is my fear.
Yeah.
We've been a resident there for 53 years. My great-great-grandfather was the third person to settle on the beach. And to have a issue like this all of a sudden potentially come up would be an issue. Right now, the people in front of me, which are beachfront property, are relatives, and we have a right of way through that property. But who's to say that they don't sell their property down the road and there's an issue that comes up? Or who's to say that we don't sell our property and now it's a disadvantage for us selling that property, saying you can't store a dinghy or a kayak on the beach in the front, which currently exists today. So that would be one of my concerns. And then moving forward, I saw that there would be potentially permits or numbering or something. So I have a mooring out there currently, which I believe is going to be tripled in price this year.
Oh, nice.
But I have a mooring out there. If I was to, for some reason, take a couple of years off from having a mooring, let's say I'd be grandfathered in today, but if I was to take a couple of years off from having a mooring, what is the process to eventually get that tag back again for my dinghy?
Yeah, that is controlled by the harbor master out of Cape
Correct.
Corpus, so that's really not anything in our.
I'm not talking about the mooring,
right.
I'm
But our
talking about,
Sorry.
the suggestion was that
Yes.
the tags for the dinghies would just go along with the, so if you have a mooring, you would
Okay.
automatically get, without paying.
so moving forward, if I go to mooring, I would get a dinghy tag.
Right.
Exactly,
Okay, perfect.
exactly.
Those are really a couple of the questions that I had. And then as we have discussion, I may have more. But once again, it's Todd Chisholm,
Sure, thanks, Todd.
530 Kings Highway.
Thanks for coming.
And just
Thank you.
one comment, Todd, that anything in this proposal really wouldn't change the legality of where you're placing your dinghy today.
Okay.
That's a larger issue of the beach use agreement and everything.
Yeah,
This
I
is not
guess,
affecting that.
I guess my concern would be, we talk about the 25 feet, we talk about public property down at the west end. I'm not aware of any town property other than after the 25 feet, which would be high tide.
Right.
I think on the west end, that might be very true statements. Does
Yeah.
that sound right? I think there's no right-of-way, is there a town right-of-way that goes?
Just at
very
the end.
Right.
Going out to Batson.
Right.
Yeah, it's going out to Batson. It's
Right.
the only one, you're correct.
Yeah, and my boat is right in the middle. There's a couple other ones. Yeah, there's a couple other ones.
Not, oh,
Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry, we're thinking the west end.
We're talking west end.
The
Right.
empty side, is that the side you mean?
so your boat today could be on someone's 25-foot reserve area and they don't care, or they're
It
giving you
is.
permission.
Yes.
Or
That's cool.
it's on town property because that person has no reserve area.
Right.
And then the town property goes right to the,
Yeah, unfortunately, it
Right.
really legally can't be on town property,
unless we,
unless
Unless we do
this
something.
allows this to be
Right.
on town property. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Todd.
hi there.
Hi,
Hi, Ann. Come on up.
Ann Corby. I'm a backlot owner, and we have a Boston whaler and use a kayak to get back and forth to that, and the kids take them out to the islands. We actually own more than one kayak. We keep one at the beach that is on a beachfront owner's property, and this wouldn't impact us, I don't think. However, I think there are people who do have moorings and want to be able to come and go from there. I mean, we use that kayak several times a week. I'm wondering if there are any safe places for storage racks where they could be protected and away from storms or any damage to the dunes. I mean, it seems to me that we can keep people away from the dunes, that if that's just patrolled and monitored, and certainly the fencing off, but if people are dragging kayaks back and forth every day, doesn't that offer the potential for damage as well?
Some perhaps on the pathways, there's certainly
well,
a possibility.
Well, you have to
there.
go on the pathways,
No,
right?
no, the
Yep,
sand's
yep,
okay.
yep.
It wouldn't hurt the vegetation, because there's no vegetation on the pathways. On the edge of the pathways.
Well, I see kayaks left on the sides of our pathway
well,
all the
They can't be,
time.
and that's the problem, so do we, and that would stop.
Yeah.
That's the reason for this.
So I guess I'm objecting to sort of an all or nothing situation. It seems to me that reasonable people can figure out a way to handle this where we protect the beach, but we also keep some of the tradition of the beach that's been on for this family 53 years, and taking away that spirit at Goose Rocks, which we've been losing pretty steadily over the past 20 years. I don't remember when it all started. But I just hope that we will look at some intermediate measures before we go to something that says no kayaks on the beach.
Well, and we're open to suggestions.
No, I know you are. I
We-
heard that
we
loud and
have-
clear, John.
We have been trying to look, to try to find a storage. Several of the beaches do that. The town, they're set up so that there's a road that comes in to the main part of the town, or you might think of it kind of like where the general store is. And there are racks there, and people get permits, and you buy it, and you can keep your rack. You still have to carry it all the way down to the water, but it certainly helps people that are, a mile or two from the beach to
Yes.
be able to have access. There's no property that I know of, that looking at that, where we could have that. We kicked that around, we looked at that as a possibility. Nothing made sense to us.
Okay. Anyway, I put that out there to
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Pat Souza. I'm Crescent now.
Hi, Pat.
I actually agree with pretty much everything that she has said this evening. In fact, she probably took most of what I was going to say. We've been here since 2014. We've owned property here. And when I came in 2014, we would walk down, I kept a kayak on the beach. And I really didn't see that many, because
Right.
I bought from somebody who was on Kings Highway when we purchased our property.
Right.
And he said, it's tradition here. Nobody, you don't have to worry about it. No one, I said, what a great community. This is great. We put rebar in whenever I stored my kayak. We had two, but we only kept one there, kept one at home because we didn't use it
Yeah.
until family was there. We always made sure that they were secure. We weren't on the dunes. So that's part of it. As I'm getting, well, I will say, like you said, once you put those racks out there, you open the door. As far as I'm concerned, here, come put your kayaks, everybody. How do we know,
Good.
how do we know those were residents of our property owners.
You don't?
They could, we don't. Well, I think,
And they weren't
No.
intended to be private.
well,
They were intended to be for
It was
Anybody-
whoever was using the
public.
beach. It's a public beach.
I know, but we're complaining about how many we have there.
Right,
Right.
right.
Unfortunately, it was created by us.
I
We
don't
agree.
disagree. Don't
Okay.
disagree.
We agree, unintended consequence.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
So now how do we change it? Don't take it from 100 down to 0 and take things away from people. I think there's so much overmanagement sometimes that you really alienate people, inadvertently. That's what you do. That's what happens to people.
I don't disagree.
And there's,
okay.
I haven't been here many years, but since 2014, I love it here. Now I'm full-time resident. I enjoy it, but I'm getting closer, very close, and I don't want to say to the 70 mark. And I'm not going to drag my kayak. I'm not going to, I have trouble now just pulling it from a nice area that's not by the dunes to the water. And I go 2 to 3 times a week. That pleasure's going to be taken away because I can't take it from the house. So I think you're taking things from people again. Maybe we need to think about how do we get it back to where it was. Yeah, maybe we are going to limit who has kayaks on the beach, but we already have that. If you're going to give it to people who have moorings, there's a group. Beachfront owners, there's a group, but the rest of us get nothing. You're creating this. I think it's creating some hardship. The kayaks, and I've read the last 2 years of your minutes and your meetings, and I will say, and I can read them off to you tonight, I didn't see in 2001, when it was brought up, that it was it was all positive. It wasn't negative. When the observation happened,
For the
I'll
kayak,
read
for the
them.
racks, for the racks.
No, they didn't find that the kayaks caused any concern. The names are there on 2021 and 2022. I just read them. I
Yeah,
read
but
them all.
I think
You
John's
don't see
point
it.
is, it started out wonderful, and it worked out, and then everybody came and said, oh, we can keep our kayaks here. Only locals, I guess, kept their kayaks there before, because most people don't leave their private property on a beach,
Yeah, but these
because
are
they
when the
would think.
kayak, this is when the racks were there,
Yeah.
2021 and
No, but-
2022.
I think what we're saying is, it's like doubled every year. And,
I agree with you.
yeah,
I agree.
So what will
So
it be
is it-
next summer, and what
So
should
is
we do
there
about
a way
it?
that we could limit it, manage it? Why do we have to go all or nothing?
Yeah.
Well,
Why
that's-
can't we
that's-
find something? I mean,
Some
I
people
read-
have suggested a lottery, like, like the clam licenses, there's only so many issued,
Why
and.
not stickers for everybody, like the cars? I mean, we got parking stickers, why not stickers for the kayaks?
Well, why can't we just make
One
it?
per household, anyway. you know?
Well, that wouldn't,
Why-
we have 500 houses there.
So you couldn't make it that it was,
Kayak?
could it make it just property owners of Goose Rocks Beach? Why? Why?
Well, that's only, it's not all
No, I mean,
beachfront owners.
we're not saying you can't kayak there. But
Right,
as far as, I know.
because,
I would never sign up for give something away that's been mine and my family's for 100 years.
I didn't hear what you
and
said.
the reason, just sort of a side question on the proposal for 4 stickers for the families that are in the agreement, that's because under the ordinance, they have the right to store stuff out front. And they can give,
Discrimination.
I know, it is. I agree,
Flat-out
but, I know, but that's another whole issue as
That's another
I'm
issue.
concerned. But that is true, when you really kind of think of, you did say that in that recommendation, the beachfront owners can store, and you give them 4. And if they need more, they can have them. Well,
that, because they have that right under the ordinance, which we all voted for
I
and
know,
approved.
but you didn't have,
I feel your pain.
I know, but when I'm saying, don't take it away from the rest of us, at least try. Make an attempt to at least have something.
That's why we're
for
here,
it.
to talk
Right,
about it,
well, that's
and
all-
we're
and that's
happy to
why I'm
take,
here.
And thank you.
come up
And
with,
that's why I'm at.
give us ideas.
I just want to try, listen, ask my husband, I've been weeks looking at all this stuff and writing ideas down.
Sure.
And
What
I did
about-
have ideas.
Well, what if we, this
Why go to 0? It's like,
this still opens up the danger of a summer storm, but, this is the
And-
idea of compromise,
Right, that's
if
what I
we-
think.
If we kept the racks, and
I-
the question is, what's the right number?
Correct.
Right
That's
now, we're
exactly what
saying
I had in my notes.
200's too many.
How do we
and
identify how many?
zero is
How do
too
we
few,
identify where
right?
is a safe place?
Okay, yeah.
There's plenty of, what's an idea of the number of racks? The number of, I mean, why can't we come up with something? You have to start somewhere to get there.
Well, we did start somewhere, and boy, did
Well,
I get your attention.
I didn't see it.
So, I mean, the
I didn't
point-
see any information on that.
No. I'm saying that
haven't.
we put out a proposal to get to this point where we can have a discussion.
All right.
And this is what we're having, which
Well-
we're having a discussion.
I
Okay?
agree.
All
I
right, good.
agree.
So-
I agree with you.
So if we had 9 racks and we said 90 kayaks is a reasonable number to let stored on the beach.
Because are you saying there's 10 in a rack then?
Yeah.
That's what, and I was going to mention that, and how we got to 175 on that, because that would have been 19 to 20 on the rack.
No, 175 were the numbers that were there. They weren't on racks. That's the
Those
problem.
pictures all taken up in the same time?
Same day.
Same day.
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
that's one walk of the beach.
Fourth of July weekend?
No, it's August, yeah, right on. That was August 29th. A lot of people had gone home with their
I thought
kids.
the number was crazy.
I
I'm
did.
big into numbers. I
Yeah.
thought the 170 number was
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, I was-
We walked down there, and
Well,
we see the 20 or 30 there. When we walk down the rest of the beach.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so, yeah, people who are watching at home or
I'm sorry.
on the internet
Yeah.
can't hear.
But it
So
was a good
why don't we finish up, and then
Okay,
if
so I
if
just-
this gentleman wants to speak,
I will.
He can come to the mic.
For the sake of time,
What you asked,
I will sit down. I did come with some ideas, but I know there's other people here who really want to talk. But I just would like the committee to take the opportunity to really work with the community
Yeah,
as a whole,
totally
as a whole,
heard it. Thank
not
you.
sections.
You know, one thing that comes to mind, John, I'm just thinking in terms of sort of when we say doubled and quadrupled, and I'm wondering how many of those are really from away? Renters, people that are,
I think it's a good possibility. People rent kayaks for a week, they're gonna leave them there on the beach.
absolutely.
And that's what I would do if I
Yeah.
were renting for a
So
week,
would
come
I.
on.
And I
So
just
that's-
wonder
yeah.
if there isn't a way to sort of classify, people that are living right at the beach, even if they're not oceanfront,
Well-
but they would be at perhaps if we did go to a lottery.
I would think, Barry, that we would have people that would have the opportunity to do that, the backlot owners certainly, and people who own property that are not beachfront, that already have a reserved area, but those that did not join with the lawsuit. I mean, those that don't have that 25 feet certainly would be eligible, would be in the lottery. 90 would be chosen, they would get stickers, they'd be assigned a rack. The reason I asked we do that is the CEOs have to be able to go and identify who's not properly there. By gosh, everybody will be. And then the ones that aren't there will get removed. And then we've got 90 people that know they've got a kayak and a place to be. And that's, I don't know, what do you folks think?
would you do it, if you issued 90 permits, would you do it for the whole summer, or for a month,
Oh,
or?
that's an interesting thought, have it each month?
Well, you have to include everybody in town, too. I mean, it is a town beach,
You're the town rep.
town beach,
Town
so,
beach, that's,
you
yeah,
know.
oh, gosh.
So I would
You
be,
know,
Can't be
again,
just people at the
It's a town
beach.
beach, but we're not saying people can't kayak at Goose Rocks. That would be a problem. We're talking about the privilege of storing your kayak at Goose Rocks. Seems to me, I could make an argument in my mind that that's a privilege that would be extended only to people living at Goose Rocks. I don't need to include the town for the overnight storage permit. Obviously, it would never get in the way of them wanting to bring a kayak and kayak.
I disagree with
But,
you.
yeah, I
All
disagree,
right.
too.
There we go.
I'm with John on that one.
Well, the people at Goose Rocks have the easiest chance to get there.
Oh, good point.
Everybody at Goose Rocks
Good argument.
could spend $75 on a wheel and
And wheel
get
it
it there
down.
easily. Someone who lives on Beechwood can't do
I
that.
hate it when you make sense.
So yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
Fred that it should be equal to anybody in
then-
town. You could limit it to town residents. I
Well,
mean, anybody, anybody
Alright.
with a property renting or owning and,
But not everybody, but only people that request to be put in the pool are in the pool. So my concern is you got 90 of them, you just can't take all the town residents, obviously, and do it.
no,
So
you'd have to
you'd
have some kind of
request.
if
So
you have
someone
to.
requests to be in the
Right.
lottery,
Yeah.
And then it would be pulled.
So,
Todd, you wanna
Chisholm
speak again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was extremely surprised by the number of 175 as well. I would question how many of those are people that are coming up for the weekend from another state, leaving it there, realizing they can now leave their kayaks there instead of carrying them back
Very
and forth.
possible.
That's what we gotta stop.
So, two things, we should be able to figure it out, because we damn well figured out how to charge the renters on the beach of Kennebunkport who own houses, and now have to get a permit and pay $350 to $700 a year.
To rent.
Every year, to rent their
rent
house
that,
that they've
yeah,
had in
sure.
their family for many, many years.
Yeah,
Okay, they're very easily figured out that process within a year.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing. And then,
I suspect kayaks are harder.
yeah. Well,
It's not fixed to the ground with a tax
Yeah,
record. and-
Yeah, the other thing is, why couldn't we do it like a mooring system? I have to apply every year for
Sure.
a mooring.
Yeah.
Kayaks could be no fee, but there's only,
Sure.
Yes, yes.
you
I
know,
would
so
say
then we
no
could
fee.
track the ones that actually come to the beach, maybe are leaving them there over the week while they're back in Massachusetts. And I'm from Massachusetts, so I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I
Yeah.
originally was from Massachusetts. They come up on the weekends, instead of transporting it back and forth every weekend, they're
Yes.
leaving it on the beach.
Yes.
So tag those kayaks, and those that are left during the week that don't have tags are removed,
Yes, yes.
you know, and use it as a mooring system, because I have to apply every year,
So
every
there'd be-
single
so-
year.
But now, I worry about the number, though, and I like the idea, but that's
Yeah.
why I think maybe everyone would apply by a certain date, and then you do a lottery if there's more than 90.
Why don't we take, is there another comment on the floor? And then I'd like to go to Zoom and see if there are people there who want to talk in the back.
Hi, I'm Rob Dwyer. I live at
Wait,
Edgewood.
when you get to the mic, tell us who
Sorry.
you are.
I'm Rob Dwyer.
Hi,
My
Rob.
house is at the corner of Edgewood and Kings Highway. So I'm direct line. You know where I am. It's like the Times Square for kayaks. And the sand comes up directly from the beach, so it goes onto the road and everything else. So all I'm saying is, when you do allocate with the stands for the kayaks, beware of something like Edgewood Avenue is going to automatically pick up a lot more than others, and to allocate the spaces more broadly. Does that make sense?
It does. Unfortunately, we're restricted to the trust lots.
Well,
So-
that's not quite true. We could ask the Board of Selectmen tomorrow to let us put the racks on town property.
There's only one that's town property, everything else is privately owned.
In front of my house, that's town property, because I bought it from a guy named Charlie Butts.
Yeah.
Yep, good old
Back-
Charlie.
Oh,
I know, I
Charlie
worked
Butt.
at his store as a kid.
Back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he gave the land with the dunes on it
Yeah.
for a tax write-off.
Yeah.
And I got the house.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with kayaks, because if I can't get a kayak to the beach from my house or my yard, that's not the issue here.
Yeah.
But my concern more is, 5 million of them right in front of me at Edgewood Avenue.
Yeah.
And then there's a few at Jeffries, there's a few, and so forth and so on. If there's some way to space that out in any kind of
We
lottery.
can certainly look at that. Again, we would need if it's not town property, we would have to have the lot owner's permission to put a rack there. Because it's got to be within that 25 feet, obviously, it can't be further
Yeah,
into the
okay,
surf.
okay.
So that's the only thing, but we haven't taken the effort to do that, because we thought the trust was enough, so, and we were wrong. So,
Yeah, it's not working that
yeah,
way.
yeah. But that's a good thought. We'll try to spread it's like the fires. We spread out the fire pits the same way to prevent them from all going down so that's doable.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
doable. Thank you.
Kate, did you have a comment before we go? Okay, we have two more here.
Hi,
Okay.
Kate Bauer-Burke, Summer Breeze Lane. And in full and fair disclosure, I was a member of the BAC for 6 years until this, past year, and I have been a member of the subcommittee that looked at this, although I have to give John kudos for most of the work on this and a great job. I'm listening to this, and I'm a little concerned by 2 points. One, I don't see this as something that's been a time immemorial right. It's been the law, the ordinance that said you can't leave things on the beach overnight, except there was exceptions for things tied with the moorings and getting out to the moorings. Whether it be a dinghy point, or I think Todd raised some good points about, if there are moorings at the west end, we need to look at that and figure that out. But in my view, this idea of putting, and thank you to the Conservation Trust, was really more of an experimental one of let's put these racks here and see if we can protect the dune grass, which is critical to the health of this beach. I mean, if you look at the two major constituencies of this beach, first is nature, because we don't have a beach if we don't keep nature healthy. And second is people. And then we went through the dogs and we went through the campfires and things like that. And the kayaks are, especially in the numbers they're being used these days, is a relatively recent phenomenon. So trying this experiment was a good idea. But as we've seen, it was taken uber advantage of. The numbers of kayaks that are being, and watercraft that are being left there, which then leads to people leaving other things like beach chairs and inflatables and things, other recreational things, I think is just wrong. We go down a slippery slope that way. And in addition, the more room, the other thing with the kayak racks, even if we proceed to put them back in some way, shape, or form under a system that limits the numbers, we still are, to every one of those kayak racks takes away 10 to 15 feet of beach. So, and as we all know these days, tides come up higher. We are in the midst of climate change. That's not going to change. The beach, even though it's at the east end during low tide, it's phenomenally large. But if you look at it at high tide many times, it's a lot smaller, and there's maybe 10 feet left out from the kayak racks for people to actually sit there and take part in the normal activities this beach has been used for forever. I'd also like to, again, reiterate the point that John has made and other people have made, that we are apparently now the only beach in this general area that even allows this. And there may be good reasons why other towns have looked at it in connection with their beaches and said recreational kayaks are not a priority, should not be a priority on our beach. I totally agree with things like the mooring points, people getting out to their moorings. We've got moorings there that are licensed by the town, and people do need a way to get out to them. And that's been happening for years and generations. So I, probably have a target on my back now, but I don't think this is something that has been a long-standing tradition. The campfires even were a much longer-standing tradition. The dogs were a much long-standing tradition, and we've dealt with them. But on this one, I have to say I am supporting this proposal.
Thank you. We had two more right here. Let me just one comment. If anybody on Zoom wants to talk, they should do what? Raise the chat?
We have 6 hands raised right now.
Okay, great. Thanks. Go ahead.
I'll be brief. My name's Lori Lord. I live on Beechwood Avenue, and I'm a little troubled to hear this conversation be primarily about people who own property at the beach. We're all Kennebunkport residents, and I think we need to keep that in mind. Historically, my family has kept prior to the BAC or these changes, we kept our kayak at the Batson end of the river. Went to the police department, asked them where could we leave it, and they gave us a place and said you can leave them here, no problem. That went on for about 25 years, and then in 2021 we started getting tagged down there, which was okay. And then we learned that there were that things, so it gave us another option. And we appreciate that. And the other thing I appreciate is the repair of the dune grass at the Batson End River. Yeah. That there's been a marked improvement. So it's a legitimate issue. In the pictures that you showed, a lot of what I saw in terms of dune grass damage was things that were untethered. Why are those allowed to be anywhere? Why don't the police just take them off the beach, or the beach patrol people take them off the beach?
Well, we had no authority at that point to do that. The town just isn't in a position to do that without proper authority and due process.
Okay, so if something is tethered down, it can be there, but if it's not?
No, not so. But everything is allowed to be there at this point. That's why we're setting
But
this.
is that something you could take into consideration, that if things are not tethered, that they can be removed? You're talking about a towing system for removing things that are left on the beach. So if things are not tethered down, can they be towed
Well, you could,
in that process that you're
well, you
looking at
could
creating?
make that as a stipulation. I think that, I don't know if I'd want people to put their own tethers down and say, because I've got
Well,
this
no,
stake
on the
in this-
racks that were
Well, on
there
the
is what I
racks,
meant.
And I think that was what the compromise I
Right.
think I hear being talked about, is to say we would put some racks back, we would limit the number and provide tags, identified tags, stickers to those.
Right.
those
So you'd
watercraft.
register your kayak like you would to get a
boat
beach pass?
Or a mooring.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
That's a thought. That's just something I hear as a possible compromise.
Okay. But I would ask that the committee would consider Kennebunkport as a whole and not
I
just
think, I've heard that.
beachfront. It's a public beach.
apologize for
And
my
that,
piece.
no, that's okay.
So
I just
I
would
I
ask,
have been
that's my
corrected.
request. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you all for being on the committee here. I know being on committees is difficult. My name is Kathleen DeMar. I am fifth generation now working on over at Goose Rocks. I have to say that we're going down a very bad slope here. First of all, do you remember when the dune grass was rebuilt in front?
When it was rebuilt?
Yes, you should look that up. Okay, number one. Number two, are any of you scientists?
Why don't you tell us instead of,
No, I want you to look it up.
What do you mean by rebuild?
We planted grass there.
right.
It
yeah.
wasn't always there,
Oh, yes, it
Okay.
was, but you certainly did, and go ahead, I'm sorry.
and I was too young to plant it, but I remember
Well,
it
we've replanted
distinctly.
since then,
We've
too.
replanted since then, too, and it's washed away, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's nature
Yes,
for
it
you,
is. Yes,
okay?
it is.
Second of all, are any of you scientists?
I have been accused of that, yes.
Are you a
I
scientist, sir?
have a PhD in geology.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Well, I would like to see some written reports that show more. Lovely pictures, drone pictures are wonderful, but I think we're getting too far ahead of ourselves. There's discrimination going on here with allowing some members to have 4 tickets to keep their kayaks. People in the back can have 1. Poor folks that live in Kennebunkport may not be able to have any. We got to work on that. That's not right. I'm really disappointed. And next year, what will happen, I said this comment, those of us that are fortunate to be able to have a kayak on the beach will probably need to paint it white with a blue stripe.
Red stripe.
Red stripe. Oh, they're changing to red. I thought the buoys were white. Then we're going to get into what size beach chair we can use, what size cooler. What are we going to be able to use for a canopy or an umbrella, or perhaps they won't be allowed?
Well, you can't leave 'em
This
on the
has
beach.
got to stop. That's all I have to say. I hope all of you that are out there in Zoom will think about this and really consider trying to find a way to abolish these type of committees. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's go to Zoom. First one. Tell us who you got.
Gail Dankert
Sure. Hi, Gail. Promote her.
needs to unmute herself.
Gail, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Can you hear me now, Paul?
Perfect.
Okay, good. One of the questions that we had that we were concerned about is looking at the proposal involved people tagging people and then having kayaks removed. It seems to me there's an entire issue here beyond what people have already spoken to, much of which I agree with, that we need to find some sort of a halfway point here that's gonna deal with this. We need to look at the communications issue because many of the kayaks that people are bringing forth are from people who rent their homes. And so the communication needs to be really thorough, that people would understand if there are new rules about this, how they're to be enforced. And then I think the potential exists for there to be an enormous amount of anger. If people get a ticket for $85 or $185, I don't know how that's gonna be managed by these young people who walk the beach to police it. I just see a whole lot of problems with that.
Thank you. Thanks for calling, thanks for watching and asking to speak.
Is there any comment on that, Paul?
Anyone on the board want to respond?
Well, the tagging would just be done by the summer patrol people. I don't know if you're clear on that or not. They're the ones that would do any tagging.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, they
I
would,
am, but if someone gets a tag for $85 and they're not well informed that this is happening, how are they gonna respond? To whom do they respond? How is that gonna be handled?
well, it
I
will,
mean, it's a
Yeah, no,
whole issue that
it
needs
is
to
a
be
difficult
fleshed out.
management issue,
yeah, it is.
particularly in the first year.
Yeah, in the first year, it's going to be tough. There will be a lot of signage. I hate to use that word for Goose Rocks, but it'll be temporary to inform people. The CSOs would place a tag. It wouldn't be till 24 hours later that a professional, they're a towing company, but they have a section of them that remove kayaks from beaches. I mean, that's how prevalent this issue is. They do it up north, and they'll come down now and do it here. And it's to them that you go and would have to retrieve your illegally placed watercraft.
So I understand what you're saying, John, but what I'm suggesting is that people need to understand this. There needs to be pretty thorough communications.
100%.
Not just a sign,
Oh,
but letters
100%.
to homeowners who are renting their beaches and realtors and people who are gonna be managing this, because I think there's a potential for there to be a lot of anger.
Oh, I'm sure.
And, it's not a good thing for the beach to have this.
Full agreement. We have, the program was to reach out to all the realtors, to email everybody, to send letters. Absolutely. This would be a large communication effort to get it out when we decide what to do.
Okay,
So, Paul, one of the questions I have in listening to this now is, what are going to be the costs of these enforcement mechanisms? Where's the money going to come in order to create the machinery that's going to enforce this so it actually makes a difference?
It's actually all in place. The CSOs are already being paid. This would be just a minor, they're already tagging things, so there's no additional cost there. And the reason one pays an $80 fee is to fully pay the individuals that are removing the kayaks. There's zero additional cost to the town.
Have you considered at all what the impact would be on people returning to the beach or feeling that this was a beach they wanted to come to if there was this kind of potentially punitive perception by them about this? Because Goose Rocks really is a beach that welcomes kayaks because of the islands, because of the calmness of the water. It's uniquely set, it's unique in that sense to encourage that.
And that's why it's going to be important, as you say, to educate people so that they know the consequences if they choose to leave their kayak on the beach overnight. I agree that education is going to be so important.
I'm concerned that there isn't enough time to do this adequately before this year. Perhaps I'm mistaken about that, but that's one of the concerns I have.
That's reasonable. It's why we are starting this early.
Another question I have has to do with the data that you gathered. There were 189 kayaks at the end of August. What was the count in June, July, beginning of August, September? Was this a chronic problem throughout the summer, or was this kind of just a temporary problem at the end of the summer?
All I can say anecdotally is I had noticed that the kayaks were much more than they'd ever been. I'd only did the survey once, just on my own initiative. It was the 23rd of August. A lot of schools had started, a lot of people had left. So it is my assumption that this was not the peak.
yeah, it's the easiest week to get a rental at, in season at Goose Rocks.
110 July 4th week, and that didn't cover the whole.
Well, having walked the beach extensively throughout the summer, I'm completely unaware of the fact of all of these kayaks being present there. And my concern is that what is the problem that you have identified and for which you are developing what kind of a solution yes, there are a lot of kayaks at the end of August, but is this a chronic problem throughout the summer?
Yeah, I think Kate counted on 4th of July weekend, which would be early for people to put stuff out, because a lot of people don't even get there, and she counted 110. So, and that was part of the beach she walked. Yeah, now, I mean, my observation was it was relatively consistent over the summer. Some weeks were worse. The busiest weeks are, you get more stuff piled there.
You get
Did
inflatables.
that number include the beachfront owners who could have kayaks?
Yeah,
No, that number, my number went only to Bartlett. It did go around the corner to that very first entrance at Bartlett. There were probably maybe 30 out of that's why I said 175. The 175 was between Dinghy Point and Little River. Then if you subtract from 190, I won't do it in my head that quickly, that's how many there were at Bartlett. The 191 was the total. That included Bartlett.
But to answer your question, there would have been some that were properly, well, the ones that were on the kayak were perfectly on the racks were perfectly welcome to be there. And there were some that were in front of people's homes too, who were in the beach agreement.
The tides in Hidden Pond, that they transport people back and forth.
The tides were in the count, but they're kept right in front of their area there within their 25 feet.
And how
But
many were that?
that was probably 12, I would say, maybe, just looking at it in my mind's eye. I've got that picture, we could look at it later.
And then Hidden Pond as well?
It's all kept together in that one spot.
Okay, because I know they transport people back and forth.
Yes, I know they do.
I know they do.
That's another thing, again, guys, well, you want us to, should we legislate that? I mean, where do you choose on what you stop doing and start doing in terms of making these rules? I would ask the madam in the corner.
Can we continue with the people on Zoom and give them a chance who are there? Who's next? Thank you, Gail.
David Stevator.
Okay, David, can you unmute yourself?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, thanks, David.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. And first of all, I want to recognize the work that the Beach Advisory Group is doing, because I know that there's an awful lot of differing points of view, and you're taking this, all the other things that you need to spend your day on. So thank you for the work you're doing. I want to say a couple of things. I have some things that I generally agree with from some of the prior speakers, but I do want to note that I think it's okay for Goose Rocks Beach to be the only one doing something. I may not be the only one that feels that way. It is a unique place, so I think it's probably okay that we're the only ones doing some things a certain way. So let's not have that be the reason to do something. I also do think that we're taking a fairly drastic, kind of approach to a problem that is admittedly partly the result of what this group has put out there. So I think that was acknowledged a little bit earlier. We've already lost, more or less the ability to have fires on the beach. I know you can still have them, but it's completely different. Now, can't have dogs off leash at any point during the summer. One of the prior speakers mentioned that it really does feel like life on the beach is different. And that's not the rules that I just mentioned aren't the only reason for that, but there's some consternation about that. I would just say, let's find a compromise here. And John, I think you've been sort of putting some thoughts out there about that. I think it would be realistic and reasonable to limit the number of kayaks and to try to do more to educate people about the dune grass. I think since the dawn of time, on everywhere, there are problems with people trampling dune grass. We're not unique in that. And I think that we need to find a middle ground here. This feels like it's coming out of nowhere. I know it's not, because I know that the racks were an attempt to try to address this. They didn't work. At least they didn't have the intended impact, but let's not simply throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I'm personally fine with a limit. And by the way, I should have said, I live at 4 Skyline Drive, so I'm a backlot owner. Sorry that I didn't mention that earlier. I really am fine with a limit. I think it just needs to be high enough. Reasonable people, I think, can agree on what that should be. I think it's fine to have a lottery if by a certain date the limit is exceeded, if the number of requests is exceeded. I guess the last thing I'll say is that no matter what ends up happening here, because I do appreciate the need to do something. To the prior speaker's point, let's just really be thoughtful about phasing something in and not have people feel like they're arriving back to a beach this year with yet one more change in rules that they weren't aware of. I'm thankfully subscribed to the BAC email newsletter and the notice of these meetings, so I'm aware of them. But most of the beachfront, and I know you can sit there and say they should be aware, people should be paying attention. Mostly they're not. And so people will come back at the end of the spring and beginning of the summer and find more things are different. Which, I guess that's okay. It's okay for things to change, but let's really work hard at communicating whatever is going to change so that people understand why, and they understand that it's happening. And I'll be honest, I still don't understand the rule change around the fires. It's just a complete mystery to me. So that's it. Sorry that I was a bit long-winded, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next.
Next, we have Nancy.
Hi, Nancy. Can you unmute yourself?
This is her husband, Jim. How are you?
Hi, Jim. Welcome.
Thanks for the opportunity. I live at 11 Edgewood, and I got a few things to add in here. I was here at the 2018 storm, and I've got some great pictures of myself standing at the dunes where the waves took out chunks of the dunes that were taller than me. I had the thought of the only thing that would have protected that was Poseidon or Aquaman. And I thought it would have been pretty cool to see Aquaman, but he didn't show up. But it wasn't kayaks on the beach that could have caused that. It was definitely severe storms. I think it's really hard to make everybody happy, and I don't envy your positions. I do agree there's overpopulation on there. But I think tying it strictly to dunes versus an unsightly number of kayaks might be somewhat of a mistake. The dunes are grown pretty well, and the seagrass is growing pretty well. So I don't know. I think maybe the DEP could step in and give some thoughts on that. But I think what we should talk about is anytime proposals go forward or good ideas go forward, they're all good ideas. It's just intended consequences and unintended consequences. And I think that trying to make everybody happy is going to be somewhat impossible. So we have to strengthen the arguments for both. What's the intended? What's the unintended? Is it just to limit the number of kayaks? Is it to protect the grass? What is it? So I think to shorten it up a little bit, I would tell you that 3 years ago, before those kayak posts went in, which I use, and I do lock my kayaks to the posts, so they're pretty secure. It really, prior to those going in, you were correct. The dunes were up in the grass. They were all over the place. It was quite a mess. And when the kayaks were, and when the posts went in, it actually got tidied up a little bit. And I really didn't see, coming out of Edgewood, which is probably one of the busiest spots on this side of the beach, I really did not see kayaks all over the place or up in the dunes. I think they were enhanced and a great solution. And I hate to say this, but maybe we just need more of them down the beach. You might raise a few eyebrows on that one, but think about that. I think if you take those away and you take the kayaks away overnight, I think what's going to happen is during the day, one of those unintended consequences, the first thing is if you stand at Edgewood in the morning, afternoon, and night, it is a traffic jam of epic proportions. You've got people pulling from that Edgewood entrance. They stop, they unload their stuff, they unload little kids, they take their kayak off, and then they drop everybody off, and then they drive away. Then you've got people that while they're doing that, other people get upset, so they double park with them, tie up all of King's Highway there, and they're doing the same thing. And then if it gets worse, they pull down to Edgewood to the two corner houses, which one of the gentlemen's there tonight. They pull down onto Edgewood, and they park the cars there, and they do the same thing. You've got a huge traffic issue here, and I think the unintended consequence there is you've got really a real traffic issue, a people issue, injury issue, and tying everything up there, morning, afternoon, night. And that's the loading and unloading. So if I had to take the kayaks out, I live here. I'm an older guy. I'd have to drive my truck down and do the same thing. I can't carry them back. They're too big, they're too heavy. I think that's one. The other thing that would happen is there is a certain orderly fashion right now going on. If you look at where those kayaks are during the day, they're pretty much up in the area and they're on the posts. You take those away and you leave mayhem, to where those kayaks are going to be. I would suggest that most people will leave their kayaks next to their beach towels or their blankets, and they're going to be all over the beach. And you talk about blocking walking paths, they're going to be everywhere. So on both those unintended consequences of traffic, loading, unloading, and having kayaks strewn all over the beach during the day, I think you're opened up to a liability issue, which might be something we want to talk about. Solution, you never like to complain without a solution. I am for limiting, even though I hate to see that happen. The question is, how do you do it? I would suggest that they're permitted. It's another revenue stream for the town. If you live here, you can buy your permit, put them out there, and then limit them like you do with parking passes today. Why not mimic that process for kayaks? I wish you well. Thank you for your time. Any comments on that? I'd be happy to talk more.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Next.
Next, we have Maureen Devlin.
Hi, Maureen. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect.
This is Maureen Devlin, 882 Kings Highway. And I agree with the women, several of the previous speakers, particularly Ann and Pat, whose last names I didn't catch. And I agree, John, I believe you called your solution draconian. And I certainly think that's an accurate description of it. And I'm really happy to hear that throughout the course of this conversation, there's been a clear willingness to compromise. I'm not that keen, just thinking about it now, on limited spots for, say, a lottery for limited spots for the racks. Although the racks may be the right thing. It didn't go well the first go round, though. But the bigger picture, I would say, is what's the problem you're trying to solve? And is it kayaks on the dunes, on the dune grass, or where the recovery areas? And if that's what it is, then what you've suggested, just getting rid of kayaks and limiting them severely, I'm not sure addresses the problem. What I'd like to see, and another woman spoke to it whose name I didn't catch, is far more evidence and research about the effect of the kayaks on the dunes, on the beach. People have brought up nature. You brought up nature at the beginning of your presentation, John. And I would think that nature has like 99.9% is responsible for what happens on the beach. And we've got this little fraction of the kayaks. I mean, maybe we feel like, well, there's one small thing we can do something about. But, and I'm coming at this from, we have a mooring. We've got a small boat out there. We'll be able to keep our kayak on Dinghy Point. But I'm thinking about everyone else and would encourage compromise. Thanks.
Thanks,
Hey,
Maureen.
Maureen,
Just a comment on that, and yeah, it is nature. I can point you to several articles where it is documented that protecting dune grass is the #1 way to preserve the integrity, the strength, and the protective barrier that is created by a dune. So that is not in doubt. And having...
Excuse me, John.
Sure.
I didn't mean that, I'm not arguing to have the kayaks left on the dune grass or even the recovery area. But I'm saying there are other areas of sand where the kayaks could be. We're trying to solve the problem of the dune recovery.
Maureen.
Or, as someone said earlier, the speaker just before me, is what you're really concerning you, is it the fact that there are a lot of kayaks on the beach and other watercraft?
Maureen, personally, I would say 5 years ago, our challenge and our goal was to preserve the dunes as best as we could to help. And we essentially solved that problem by putting the twine and the strings one step, and that didn't work completely. People still dragged stuff through the twine and the stakes that we'd put up. So we went to the kayak racks, and I would say the first goal that worked very, very well. Most people probably, high percentage of people respected it and kept their kayaks out of the dunes. We solved the specific problem we were looking to solve. But we created another problem, and that was we attracted many, many more kayaks to the beach than ever had been put there before. They weren't in the dunes, they were on the beach. So the challenge was, gee, we're losing a lot of beach space to a lot of kayaks, and this is a scarce public resource that there are a lot of competing interests for. A high tide Sunday is in July or August is, remarkable in terms of the number of people trying to occupy the same space. So from my perspective, the current problem is not the dunes, because we're doing a decent job of protecting them. Mother Nature, of course, is going to do her thing. But so long as we continue to put I do believe if we didn't have the strings and the twines, that people would start marching right back through them and putting all kinds of stuff up there.
I'll respond to just a couple of things if I could, and then give someone else a chance. So you're saying the dunes are doing well, and
No, I'm
yet
sorry.
the whole presentation was couched in, this is about protecting the
Yeah,
dunes.
I'm sorry.
If people do have to take their kayaks on and off the beach every day, it may result in more dragging across the dune grass.
Oh.
I'm thinking maybe there's an opportunity to, with good information and warning people, we don't want to ruin people's vacations with these tickets, right? Maybe ticket the kayaks that are in the wrong space in the dunes.
Yeah, I do want to take a moment to not disagree, but maybe augment what Paul said. When their kayaks are not on the racks for the past year, a significant number of them were up into the dunes and into the grass, especially along the walkways the paths that come from the right-of-ways. There are only a few entrances where you can get through the rock wall at Kings Highway, and you'll be moving your kayaks over sand, not grass, when you're bringing them to the beach. It's when people leave them on the side of those and into the dunes that are widening those paths and making alleys for the next storm to come through and chew it out. So no, I disagree. The dunes are still a very large driving reason for why we are moving this forward.
And you can ticket the kayaks on the dunes, perhaps.
Yeah, and this proposal would include a specific mention of that, which is not in the beach ordinance right now. It's not in the beach use agreement. So one goal was to put that in so that it was clear that you couldn't put stuff up on the dunes, and the police could tag it up there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
You.
Is there another?
We have three more. We have Maureen Summers.
Another Maureen.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Oh, excellent. I'm Maureen Summers. I'm at Wildwood Avenue and also fifth generation at Goose Rocks. And I appreciate all the work that y'all are doing. And I know it's a lot of time that you've put in. And to get to piggyback really on Maureen Devlin, that was just before me, the concern here is to protect the dune grass. And yet some of us, like Todd Chisholm had mentioned, and myself, where we keep our kayak is not even near the dune grass. So, I feel like there's an issue for that too. As I get older and progress in age, there was another woman, not Anne, but another woman that was from Crescent. And as we get older, it's really hard when you're accessing at Bartlett Avenue to be carrying a kayak up and down through the narrow path and then down a set of stairs by ourselves in our 60s and 70s. It's, it's difficult. So that is a concern going forward. It's a concern because some people also, as I said, are on the west side, and some people on the east side that are back lot owners that may want to kayak, and they kayak 3 or 4 times a week, and they've always kept their kayak in an area that is not in the dune grass, or they're cognizant of it and they keep it on Dignity Point so that they're not going into the dune grass. I agree to, I think it was Jim Smith, or maybe it was Peter Smith, I'm not sure who was speaking earlier, piggybacking on him, is that, people are causing issues in the area of getting up and down and parking and unparking and trying to get ready for the beach, and taking off a kayak is just going to cause another issue for safety. So if our real concern is the beach grass and the dune grass, maybe we should be focusing on that. And, if people are putting their kayaks in the dune grass, then those people should be ticketed. We are paying community service officers. Couldn't that be part of their job? The same way they're managing what's going on the beach and managing parking. My other issue is beachfront owners having 4 or more. I mean, they could have up to 10, 12, 13. I don't know how many they can give out. There's no number on that, but they get 4, and only if you have a mooring can you get 1. So I think something needs to be looked at for people that have backlots that want to store their kayak or their dinghy right there, as they always have, and not near the dune grass. And secondly, furthermore, is this also talking about the Tides Beach Club? They store so much beach equipment, and I know that's within their 25 feet, but I have seen, and I'm sure some of you have seen, that they store it in and near the beach grass, the dune grass there. And they have a lot of stuff, and they have more of an opportunity. They have staff that could, as they do with some of the umbrellas and some of the things they don't keep every night, couldn't they have to move their stuff in and out? Why are they allowed to continue to run a business and keep a lot of stuff on the beach in the dune grass if the whole point of this is to protect the dune grass? So, these are just some of my suggestions, and I do appreciate everybody having an opportunity to speak, but I think the unintended issues that have happened and the consequences are just because we're getting so much more popular than we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. More people are finding out about Goose Rocks, and it's no longer a secret.
Valid
So,
point.
thank you.
Thanks so much.
Next, we have Rob.
Rob, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Hi, Rob Wengel. I'm at 873 Kings Highway. First of all, thank you for your service. I know that running a committee like this isn't easy, and thanks for listening. I'll take up less time than some others because I'm pretty much going to ditto the last 4 or 5 people. And the 2 things in particular I'd focus on is, one, I am in agreement that I'm not sure the evidence is so clear that the problem we're trying to solve is as clear as this proposal makes it to be. And I'm going to really weigh in heavily on the unintended consequence side of this. I think asking people to take kayaks on and off the beach on a regular basis will actually, I think the traffic jam point, very few people are going to be carrying them through the streets, but the traffic jam at crosswalks and people wheeling them and people with pickups, and I think the unintended consequences will actually make this a bigger problem, not a lesser problem. And I also think, I'm not sure I've heard this, we're here to protect all the citizens of Goose Rocks and our visitors. I think the risk of injury with people lugging, 50, 75, 100-pound crafts to and from the beach, whether it be coming from the back lots or when they're on the beach, because they're not there for the whole season, will actually create and introduce new risks that we don't have as much right now. I do foresee people, whether they use wheels or other things, are going to have more stuff around their beach chairs as they bring their kayaks to and from the beach. Overall, again, I'm sure all of this is well intended, but I think the downsides far outweigh the upside. And I think we'll be pretty disappointed with the result. And I generally agree that part of what makes this beach special is seeing all the kayaks on the beach and all the activity, and anything that further erodes what makes this place really special is a problem. And I'm a beachfront owner, and I'll have access to 4 stickers, so it really doesn't affect me personally, but it's more about how it's going to affect everyone else. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for participating.
And last, we have Linda.
Hi, Linda. Good evening.
Hi there. I'm Linda Creamer. I'm at 832 Kings Highway. A couple things. This lawsuit that happened before I was an owner, what are you doing about those of us that had no part in any of this? I don't have a chance to sign anything or not sign anything, and yet I feel that I'm in a completely different group of people. I'm segregated away from everybody on a lot of things. That's just something I wanted to put out there. I like the idea of maybe residents of Goose Rocks having registered boats, kayaks, whatever, that they want to have on the beach. I think that would be a great way of keeping an eye and knowing what's what on the beach, whether it's from somewhere else or if it's a resident. I understand that we want to keep the beach natural and all that, but also I don't understand how the tides can have beachfront property when I'm on the same side as the tides on Kings Highway and I don't have beachfront property. It's a little confusing that they can have something across the street and I can't. And also I think the reason for more, someone mentioned, why are there so many more kayaks? Well, the price of gas has gone up, so I can't afford a motorboat, but I can afford a kayak.
Yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of people are going more to the manual boats. But
And it's
I
healthier.
understand the problems, but I also am respectful of when we're there, our kayaks are on the beach. When we're not there, we bring them home. It's a pain in the neck, but I do have that respect for the beach. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think if everybody did that, we probably wouldn't have this problem. I think people do bring it for the season and leave it for 2 months, even if they're there 4 weekends. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I'd welcome you to reach out to me on your earlier issues. I'd like to talk to you some about that.
We have another comment, question in the room.
Yeah, hi, Bob Kemper, Beaver Pond Road.
Hi, Bob.
You can't enact this summer, because like everyone's saying, is all of a sudden you get down there, have a beach, and all of a sudden you can't have half of your beach. You got to tell people about it this year. Put it into the cottages, put it into the rentals, put it into all that stuff. You drop it on people this year, not a good idea. Dune grass. Paint sticks, or little sticks and twine, no. Drive some 2x4s, put rope through it. People understand rope. Twine's a joke. Rope is rope. You know what rope is. You're not protecting the grass by putting up twine. Bang some 2x4s in there, heavy rope, that'll take care of that. If your boats are in the dune grass, they get a ticket or they get dragged off. And these are things you have to tell people this summer so they're ready for next summer. You do it to everybody this summer, that's going to be a culture shock that no one's going to like. The amount of people around here lately started 3 or 4 years ago with this whole stupid pandemic. People had all this time off, so let's go to the beach. And that's where a lot of this came from. It's going to, I believe, I don't know, it's going to start slowing down when people actually start working again. And Goose Rock resident versus town. We have to go through, all this has to go through the town. All of these things, the beach has to go through the town. So when you say that, okay, town, let's get this approved. Oh, but no, you can't have the tickets. It's for us at Goose Rocks, but you got to help us pay for it. Now you're putting more stuff on the guys, the poor kids that are walking the beach for the control. Now they've got to also be a meter maid. On top of everything else they have to do, now they've got to start checking things and try and remember which ones everything is. I think that's a little more on them than it should. And a real quick question. White boats with stripes, is that a serious thing, or is that?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Well, the way some things go, yeah, I had to ask. But that's about all I have to say. It's just you can't do it this year, because if some people come down here and all of a sudden, oh, you can't have a boat now. No, you got to inform people first. And like you said earlier, this is the first time a lot of people are hearing about it. I've heard murmurs about it until now, but you're just dropping this all on everybody for this year, and that's...
You don't think 5 months of letters and talking to people and renters is enough?
Face to face, when you get to the cottage and all of a sudden your renter says, oh, by the way, next year, this is what's going to happen. Because if you tell somebody, if you tell me directions to a place, I'm never going to find the place. If you show me where the place is, I can never forget where it is. So people need to be, when they get here, shown, this is what's going to happen for next year. And you're going from dune grass to kayaks. Yes, the kayaks and stuff getting dropped in the grass, big problem. Put something up instead of twine. I always thought twine was ridiculous on the beach, but, you know, you've got
You're
to
going
do
to come
that.
help us do that, I hope, because it's a
Tomorrow,
hell of
let's
a
go.
job. All right.
I got a sledge.
Good, good, good.
But you can't just drop things like that on people. It's,
Thank you, Bob.
Paul, we have another hand raised.
Okay, there was a hand here? Okay, thank you. On to the Zoom.
Amy Paranti.
Hi, Amy. Can you?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
I am a backlot owner. I own 4 Bell Glade and 11 Bellwood. I would just like to speak to, I have teenagers and they love the kayaks. We do live close to the beach, but for them, you know, it's heavy enough equipment that I do cause that problem that people are speaking of. I drive my car up to the beach with the trunk open so they can take their kayak out and walk it up to the beach. Just for the whole safety question, I totally agree with you. If there was I would be completely agreeable to that lottery program. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
My only question is, I did miss the beginning of the meeting, and I apologize if this has been spoken about, but does this also include inflatable kayaks?
Yes. Paddle boards,
Okay,
boogie
thank you very
boards.
much.
Watercraft, yep. Thank you.
Inflatable swans.
Well, that's another story.
And we have another hand.
Okay, we have one more on Zoom. Come on in.
Cindy Freud.
Hi, Cindy. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Cindy Fruit. I live at 15 Belvedere down the street from the Tides. And I've just been following kind of the proposals here, and I understand there's a lot of concerns and things that need to be addressed. But I had a couple ideas. One was to, rather than just have a lottery, just have sort of some permit that you registered your kayak, and it would be available to anyone in the town, regardless of where they live. And just kind of going through that process, you would be able to identify, you know, how many people are really there and keeping their kayaks that are in the town. And while it's nice for other people, you know, as the town making the regulations, I think that's a bigger issue. And I know we went to Duck, North Carolina, and we rented a bunch of beach equipment and things like that. And, you know, it was very well documented on there. You can't leave any of this on the beach. And we, of course, didn't realize that that meant right against the, you know, the path. And they scooped it up, and then we had to go pick it up and pay the fine. So the concept is realistic. And I think that maybe a lot of these kayaks that are just sitting loose and not tethered to the racks and so on could be renters, just having something dropped off and leaving it there for the week.
So too.
And so, you know, the question is that, you know, is that a problem for the renters, or is that, should they be treated differently than everybody else?
Yeah,
But I think it's a way to, obviously ticketing people in the dune grass is maybe the first step, but I think maybe a phased approach to this.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ann, you want to come back to the podium, please?
Just a quick comment about what the woman who just spoke said about the timeframes. It seems to me we do beach stickers that are, a week or a day or whatever, that the kayaks could have a similar system so that people who are there for the whole season could have a kayak permit for that, and then there would be others that would be for a day or a week or whatever, so that at least we could keep track of the temporary kayaks, and people would have some kind of a commitment for the amount of time their vehicle is on the beach. So just a thought.
Just the enforcement of that and just the logistics of making that happen gets to be a bit of a nightmare, but it's something to think about.
True. I see that, John.
Yeah, but that is.
Hi. Okay, we're going to one in the room first. Go ahead.
Hi, Bob Pappas, backlot owner. First off, limiting the time is silly because my boat's on its mooring when the ice is out, and I don't pull my boat out until there's ice back in it. I fish, I clam, I lobster.
Yeah.
All that dune grass there comes back and forth all the time. You look out on Goose Rocks itself, you'll see the grass growing out there, and that gets submerged twice a day, My problem is, lugging the boat and all that stuff. I've had my boat in the same spot for 30 years. Family's had a boat down there for probably over 100 years. I could probably find pictures that have been down there in the same spot, which is off of Bartlett, which is a paper road that goes straight to the water. You can look at the big square house in Susan Lewis's old house. That's 5 foot off of her house. That's all town road.
Yeah.
It's paper road. Then you're telling me I can't, as a taxpayer, I can't even leave my boat, my dinghy, which happens to be a kayak because I'm not strong enough to carry a dinghy back and forth anymore. I use that boat almost every day. You're telling me I got to bring it from the back lot up there? That's ridiculous. Come on.
Not if you have a mooring. If you have a mooring.
If I have
you
a
would
mooring, right.
Well,
But then you're saying you're going to limit the time. So, okay, I can only have it till August or June?
No, I don't
Sorry.
think anyone, I think the proposal said if you had a mooring, then you had the right to have a boat there. The question of where the boat would be
Right.
has to be
Well, mine goes up
sorted out.
against the rocks and I tie in every time. I know when a storm's coming because I live here.
Right on.
I move my kayak when a
Of course,
storm
right.
comes. Don't be a dope.
Right.
Come on, use a little common sense.
Right.
If it gets washed out, pull them.
Yep.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
But I think the whole approach, I think you ought to just back off. Just everybody mind their own business, really.
All righty. All right. Thank you. Wish
Hi.
we could. Yeah. No,
Okay, no, we're good.
As this meeting has progressed, I don't think the issue is kayaks. I think the issue is how do you restore the dunes, and how do you do that in a way that's efficient? The kayaks aren't, in fact, damaging the dunes. People are, and their behaviors are. And so where I grew up in southern Rhode Island as a young child, and they used hurricane fencing. That's what we called it, was hurricane
Yeah.
fencing. And it's not pretty, and people might not like the way it looks, but it freaking works.
Yeah.
Like snow fencing?
Yes,
Yeah.
snow fencing, exactly, yeah. We called it hurricane fencing
Right.
because
Yeah.
it was on the beach and
Right,
it was for dunes.
right.
And so, it isn't pretty and people aren't gonna like the aesthetic of it. But if the issue here is repairing dunes, which it is,
Yeah.
and should be,
Yeah.
then there's other ways to look at doing that are maybe more efficient. Nobody can get over it, nobody's
No,
gonna drag
no,
a
that-
boat
that-
over it,
That's
for
going to
sure.
definitely block
Right?
it. That-
Right, so that was one of my comments. My other comment was again about safety. I agree, I think it takes us forever to get our kayaks down off our car. We have to get them up the beach, and it's difficult at
Sure.
best, again, because
Sure.
my third is to remember that it's a town beach, not a Goose Rocks beach.
Boy, have I heard that.
I know.
And that's appropriate.
I really, and then the communication piece. When it changed so that we couldn't keep them down at Batson River anymore, we didn't know until we got tagged. We never
Yeah.
got any kind of communication
Yeah.
from the town
Yeah.
whatsoever. And then we were left thinking, we have no options. And then somebody put a sign down there that said, and that was a year later that that sign went in at Batson.
Yeah.
And we literally drove down to the other end of the beach and walked to find the tie downs.
Yeah.
So we never got any kind of
Yeah.
communication in any form, not an email, not a mailing, nothing. And so are there people on the board that aren't Goose Rock's Beach residents?
I'm not.
You're not?
I have been
So there's
most of
no-
my life, but I'm not now.
But you're not now, okay. I was going to say, just be aware that there are other people that are entitled to use that beach as
You
well,
bet.
or have the same ownership in
Sure.
that beach.
And the beach
Absolutely.
committee does have
We know
a
that.
slot for resident at large, anywhere in the
And in
town.
fact, it's an open slot, and we're looking to fill that.
No, no, no.
Oh, it's not, I'm sorry. Oh, darn.
Oh, okay.
I
No.
heard it was open, but that's a different story.
Right, but there have been times there it has been open and no one's stood up to run for it.
That was my summary.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you. I didn't mean to make light.
Yeah.
I heard that.
And I will just say, again, from my perspective, space on the beach, a precious resource, is also an issue here. We have a crowded beach for 8 weeks
At high tide.
at high tide.
At high tide.
Absolutely.
Only at high tide.
Absolutely.
Only in high tide. I mean,
So-
there's miles of beach. People tend to congregate in one area.
Right, they congregate where it's convenient, either close to parking or where close to their house.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm
And
sure
spacing-
Somebody sitting on the beach has more right to sit on the beach than I.
A kayak?
Keep my kayak.
Oh, well, what,
I don't. And-
I think one of the issues that, and I walk the beach quite frequently, 12 months of the year, and, you know, so I mean, I get the shoulder season as well as the peak summer season. But to me, there's, whatever the number is, an inordinate amount of kayaks. And when I walk that beach in the morning, in the middle of the day, late in the day, I don't think I ever see more than 8 or 10 people out on a kayak at any one point in time. So I think there's an awful lot of kayaks that are sort of dead storage that don't get used that frequently, and I think that adds to the problem that we're facing. And I think part of it may just be identifying who owns these things, because we really have no idea. They just get left there. So, and I don't know, that may be part of the compromise. But I wanted to go back to Pat, because you seem to have some ideas, and I don't know whether you got a chance to share them with us.
No, I didn't.
Well, do you have some other ones? We'd love to hear them.
No, I mean, some of you had talked about identifying, how do you identify areas that are.
if you're going
Want to share them at
Yeah.
the microphone?
to, yeah, thanks, Pat.
Oh, sorry.
No, you were just called on,
Just,
so,
I have to pull them back out again.
not your fault.
I mean, you had mentioned a couple of them, like, how do you find, which area is safe for the kayaks? What's the number of areas kayaks safely should be put on?
And
Hold
permitted,
on.
so you know who
Hold
owns
on.
them. So
I'm going
that-
to look through my notes here.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
no, you spent some time on it. I want to hear about it.
No, I did.
Take your time.
Oh, sorry, I apologize here.
Take your time.
I mean, if we have put stickers on certain kayaks to make sure that we know we were able to communicate with those people and be able to locate them if something happens.
Right.
Everything needed to be tethered. Make sure they were all secured to the racks. Only kayaks could be stored, to make sure whoever's going to have a permit knows what the regulations are. That you have to be only kayaks, they have to be tethered, that you have to have your contact information or some way that we can get it if we need to contact them. And if there was a storm, an announced storm, that you had to remove them before the storm arrived, or designate someone to remove them for you.
I like that.
I also asked,
Well, we get that from the harbor master now on the boats.
Yeah, it's a similar kind
right,
of thing, really.
I mean, there's two
Right,
storms
but
we've
there's no way
had, haven't
currently,
happened in the
you know,
summertime. but-
it's been summer storms sometimes are a disaster where nobody removes the stuff.
Yeah, but at least.
But if you had everybody's text number, you could
Exactly,
say,
they're all going to be
Right.
notified
If
if
you
we
get
know
a,
that
if
they
you
are.
get, if you get a sticker
I
or
really
a
like
permit,
that.
you
Yeah.
get their name and their contact.
Really like that.
One other thing I was gonna ask is if we could form an ad hoc volunteer group, not the committee,
Why, are we
the community, a committee, subcommittee of people who are really want to be involved with this and come up with some ideas and maybe monitor it, and then report to your committee on a yearly basis and make adjustments as needed, not, that we could help. So not to put it all on you,
Yeah.
have us, we're all invested in this, we want the same thing,
I like
but
that.
that's all.
Thank
That
you.
was
Well,
some of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on?
Cindy still has her hand up.
Oh, sure.
Cindy, you can speak. Oh, she can hear me.
Hi, Cindy. You had your hand up. If you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to speak. Maybe.
Oh, still muted.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, committee. Oh, go ahead, Pat. Sure.
I just thought of it. People might not like this, but have we ever thought about, because I hear a lot about the traffic, picking, and I do see it, because I used to live on Belvedere by the tides.
Yeah.
Not now, but, and I'm glad I'm only moved over one street, but still. There is a lot of traffic in that area. And a lot of people have concerns. I see the kids trying to cross the streets. I think people are trying to get out of their cars. They're getting, they have their big beach bags and everything. They're trying to get little kids out. And the cars coming down there, even though they may be doing the speed limit, I think it's
Fast.
It's fast. Have we ever really thought about, people aren't going to like this, making it just during the summertime?
One
The
way?
8 weeks, one way,
thought
in
about
Dyke and out the other.
Yeah.
Oh my God, why?
We're not going to.
Why?
We've been around that tree you talk about.
Really?
No. Hey, Bob. We're not going to go. We're not going to.
I'm the one who brought it up first.
Wait.
with the group, so-
I don't think we're going to get into one-way streets tonight.
I'm sorry.
No, I
Make that a
understand.
one-way, the whole
I'm
back
sorry.
thing where the kids
Bob.
are, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Let's not go into that. We've had that discussion.
Not that that's a sensitive issue.
Don't ever do that. It's okay.
Pat, if you want to view the 10 years of our meetings, we've taken that up a few times.
Yeah.
You can watch them.
One quick one.
Yo.
Sure.
Instead of
Can you go to the mic?
Or plus the racks.
Can you,
When
what's
I
your name?
first came, Ron Souza, Crescent Ave.
Hi, Ron.
I brought up 4-foot rebar with a loop in them to tie the kayaks on the beach 7 or 8 years ago. So in lieu of the racks also, if residents, for more tags, if they, put them in, that they would put in, that they wouldn't come out. Would that be possible? And, to add on to the racks? Instead of buying more racks?
Yeah, we didn't buy any. They were all donated.
Okay. So if they were
and-
sufficiently staked, I mean, these were 4-footers I drove in.
Rebar kind of scares me with people walking at night and.
These were rounded off at the top. They had a loop in them, okay? So you could tie them right through the loop
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
They even had my initials on them
Yeah.
too, okay? So you wouldn't get hurt.
We know who to sue.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I don't agree with the one-way either.
I actually proposed that years ago.
So did I. I've done that too. And it doesn't work. I
It
know-
didn't. I didn't get
Well,
far.
it's the Wildwood piece that killed it. You just can't. You just can't.
All right, stop that.
Oh, I wasn't going down Wildwood, though. I
Oh,
was
you almost
going
have.
in Dyke and,
Oh, you
Out.
can't go.
I live on Wildwood, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
So just a couple of quick reactions. If there are people who want to come forward with, suggestions, get together, go ahead. Go for it. Meet,
But who can they contact? Let's be sure they have someone,
They can contact anyone on this committee. They can contact me.
yeah.
Um,
Or me, yeah, please. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly.
And secondly, any,
Yeah, there's
it's
an
8
important-
o'clock.
There's an important thing to mention, and I only didn't because I'm too embarrassed, I can't remember all the names, but help me, Kate. We should talk about the subcommittee, because it was a lot of work, and Pam was part of this kayak committee, and Kate, and Fred, were you with us on that?
Carol.
And Carol. That was most of the committee. And
Anybody else that was on the committee? I can't remember. Yeah, the guy that,
there was a gentleman who came, and that's the name I couldn't remember, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to miss him, so. Now, nobody can remember him, I don't feel bad. So there it is, all right, good. Good, and thank you all for.
but if people wanted to participate in that committee,
Right.
subcommittee,
Yeah.
bringing ideas and going forward, talking about things, I think that would be, I mean, the
Yeah.
subcommittees have always been open or sought the input and involvement of people in the community.
That's right. Oh, John Crowder
And you
came
s-
to one for that reason, so yeah,
Right.
that's right.
And comments on any topic, including this one, can be sent to, what's the email, Carol, that you get?
Goose Rock Speak, GRB Advisory Committee at kennebunkportmaine.gov.
Right, which is up on our webpage.
Close.
On our
You can find
page.
it on the webpage.
Yeah.
I'd like to throw something at you. Take all those Rachel Carson signs down out of the mark, visual pollution.
It is, isn't it?
Unbelievable,
Amen.
every 2 feet.
Yep.
Amen.
We're not going to solve that problem either tonight.
Yeah. We'd have to
That's
set a
the chairman's
regulation.
prerogative. That's about my only prerogative. So there's a proposal here that came from the subcommittee. Does anyone on the subcommittee want to make a motion to pass this? If not,
What's the motion?
I would like.
you'd have to make a motion. I mean, this was the proposal, so
As chair, let me suggest, and anyone obviously can disagree, I'd like to table this, this proposal at this point, meet again, and take into consideration all of the good comments that we received tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
John, I totally agree with that.
Clarifications that need to be made.
Sure.
Absolutely, absolutely, and the good data that was presented tonight, and this committee, the ad hoc committees are not, we're not required to publish their, but we will make this known as to when the committee's gonna meet. So anybody,
have to with that many number of.
right, and we did last time. When they
excellent.
when they met, we gave
Excellent.
notice.
So we will give.
If we have more than 2 members together on a committee, we have to make it a public meeting, we have to hold it someplace.
So y'all will hear.
And we
y'all
gave
will have to
notice last
trust, and
time.
We'll let you know where it is, and very much welcome you and invite you to come and help us noodle this out.
I guess,
you all for listening to us.
Well, thank you guys, it's good.
I guess one comment that I would make, I wasn't on the subcommittee,
Yeah.
one committee that I would make is, because we kept everything on the trust properties, because that was easy, and
Right.
they gave us permission,
Right.
I have always thought we kept them too close and too tight
Yep.
to each other, so that they were in the busiest spot on the beach, and spreading them out onto town property
Which was a comment. Yeah.
would be
Advice.
less of a visual problem, would take away less beach in a crowded spot. It might be slightly less inconvenient, but this is a matter of trying to balance a lot of interests.
John,
Okay.
I totally agree with the idea that it should be tabled. I think we got some really good feedback.
Absolutely.
And I think the idea of compromise and coming up with something that is better suited
Yeah.
will go a long way.
Okay, so let's close that discussion and schedule our next meeting,
Yep.
which we hadn't, or who's got, I don't have my binder with me. Did we set the next date, or we?
No,
No.
so it'll be February
Well,
sometime.
it's sort of like
Mondays,
the
right?
third Monday.
third Monday is our normal.
Month, I
But
think,
I don't
is
know
our-
that we said.
So shall we go on February 20th? What else is February 20th? President's Day, right.
Do you guys take that? Is that a,
I can't do it.
yes. All right, so
I-
that's, we can't do the Monday.
And I'm not available either, but that, you
The
can still.
Monday, the Monday after,
Yeah, that's what we were,
27th?
um,
Oh, we have to check.
we have to check.
So that's what we need to do. So we'll let people know.
1, 2, 3, 4, even though it's the 4th Monday? Okay, so I'll check and we will post a notice right away if that's our next date.
Is the
And-
agenda going to be this topic again, or is there?
No, we would have our regular meeting because we didn't have the regular topic item,
But I would,
but we would focus on that,
yes,
yeah.
this would be on the agenda, I'm sure.
Okay.
In fact, to Bobby's point, if we're going to possibly move this forward, it's got to be on that agenda because we are running out of time,
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
even though Bob says we're totally out of time.
For this year, yes, you are.
All right.
Totally out of time.
Okay, fair, fair.
Okay.
Move to
Can I have a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I just brought some in case somebody.